So good evening again, everyone. Thank you so very much for coming, yeah? And it is a lot of pleasure to have all of you here. It wasn't, we didn't give enough notice to few people, and few people who are very close to me in past life are here, and I thank you, Rahul. And the intent was really to introduce two gentlemen who've kindly agreed to be a part of our endeavor. Out at GAVS and at Basil Partners, the private equity firm that I work with, we actually have some of our other portfolio companies out here and would love them to stand up and say hello. We have Raja, who's the CEO of Relevance Lab. We have Ashutosh Bijur, who's a genuine technology purist from a company called Axion. Tony is an absolute sales savant. Tony's a co-founder with Axion. I think I also have Arvind Sharma. He's a serial entrepreneur and the CEO of a company called IT Convergence. And my colleagues at GAVS who've been able to put this together, Guru Bhopala, we have William, we have Avijit, Anand, and Samir. If I've missed someone, I'm sorry. But what we really wanted to do was to introduce two gentlemen, William Aimetti and Joe Makoid, who've kindly agreed to kind of mentor us and advise us and help bring in the belief that Joe and I keep talking about. Met with Mr. Aimetti through a gentleman called Arup Gupta, who's again an advisor, and Arup was the president of a billion-dollar company, TCS. Arup had known Mr. Aimetti for the longest time, and Mr. Aimetti and I enjoyed a great dinner at the Natirar. I remember the wine. I insisted on my back. And he has been the CEO of Dtcc. For some of the folks who may not know Dtcc, it's one of the largest clearing houses. And he is an interesting personality who, from the IT CIO to a COO transition. And That's what he's done. He's been in the board of some very exciting India-centric companies. Puneet, Polaris, he was an advisor to Birlasoft. You should spend some time telling you about some of the people that he's met in the India-US corridor and their whimsicalities. So Mr. Aimetti, again, during DTCC, had a large cache of leaders who he has worked with, and it was important that he brings in some of that gravitas into GAVS. What I really liked about Mr. Aimetti is his zest for life. He is right now the advisor to the Seton Hall board. And more important, we were trying to do this. He is an active member of the Wounded Warriors Project, something that he and I have decided to take to very closely. And we were trying to see if he could bring some of the representatives here. But rest assured, in our small little way, you're going to see GAVS closely involved with the Wounded Warrior. So thank you, Mr. Aimetti, for everything. I was very keen that Joe brings his wife here because I wanted to insist and tell her that he has a good friend in us, and I think he has an infectious personality. I almost choke up when I say that I think I found a friend and a kindred spirit. The energy, the unselfish attitude that he brings to what we are trying to do at GAVS is heartfelt. And Joe has been a CEO with various companies, has been very close to various private equity firms. His last entity, he did some fascinating work in the area of VDI, virtualized desktop, and brought some great private equity to invest in them. I met with Joe while we were selling to Ivan Durbach at Bronx, Lebanon, one of our largest clients. And subsequently, thank you, yeah. And in more ways than one. And Joe, again, is very actively working with GAVS Technologies. And we genuinely believe we have a disruptive technology. I often tell our folks that when we talk about Israel, I like Israel, Puneet, largely because in spite of it being a smaller organization, smaller country, it's been able to kind of be a genesis of companies like Checkpoint and a few others. And I think we're doing some fascinating work along with IIT, which is the MIT of India, in the artificial intelligence area, and I was talking to some of your folks about it. So without further ado, would like to invite Mr. Aimetti and then Joe Mccoy to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumit, and thank you all for attending this event hosted by GAVS. Sumit actually told you a lot about myself, but I hope I won't be too redundant. Yes, I retired about 4.5 years ago from Depository Trust and Clearing Company as a President and Chief Operating Officer. And prior to that, I was their CIO. And in my career, I also worked at Citibank. Actually, Sal Maglietta, who's an EVP from US Bank right here, we worked together at Citibank. And I also ran the operations and technology at Nomura Securities International. Okay, so that's my work background. And you know, so as you heard, Sumit invited me to have dinner with him. I guess it was in March. Okay, and explain to me what the thrust is of the business of GAVS. And I'll be quite honest with you, I had never heard of GAVS, okay? I was very familiar with TCS and Birlasoft and Polaris and Infosys and Cognizant. I visited them all in India. I brought them into DTC to do work for us, and they all did a very good job. I had to sell it to our board. okay, because we come under critical infrastructure in the United States. Just for probably you don't know, but Dtcc comes under the SEC, the Treasury Department, the New York State banking regulators. We're regulated by everybody. And if there's a disaster like there was on 9/11, we're part of critical infrastructure in the U.S. too, and we have to be able to recover even in loss of life within 2 hours. That's mandated by the Treasury Department. So therefore, we had to set up different redundant sites in different locations around the U.S. and actually overseas as well. So that's a little bit about myself. I was very intrigued by what GAVS is doing because, you know, when I was involved in looking at companies that were based in India, well, I've quickly recognized that GAVS is U.S.-based, okay, as well as India-based, okay, two separate entities that they have. And by the way, 70% of their revenue comes from the United States, okay? And the product line that they have is different than these other firms that I had mentioned. Different in the sense that, you know, when I started out using the Indian companies, it was for the labor. It was the arbitrage, U.S. cost of labor versus the Indian cost of labor. But I quickly found out that GAVS is much more than that, okay? And one of the areas I was responsible, of course, was the CIO reported into me, responsible for infrastructure and application development and networks and all of that stuff, okay? And, you know, I was familiar with process-driven solutions such as ITIL, CMMI on the application side, Six Sigma. Those are all process-oriented, but what GAVS offers is something completely different. It's machine-driven, and they really drive for a zero-incident enterprise by using machine-driven technology with artificial intelligence and predictive analytics and Microsoft orchestration as well, okay? And Microsoft is a partner with GAVS, for those of you that don't know, and a very valued partner. So I was intrigued by what they had to offer because what they're trying to do is, one of their Gavel products, is trying to identify a problem before it happens. Not through processes once it happens, but to figure out that you're going to have some downtime. Your applications aren't going to be running so smoothly. You could have a problem with your networks. You could have your problem with your storage, your servers, your security, etc. Well, their analytics can predict where you're going to have a problem. They can take it out, they can remediate it, and put it back in, so your uptime isn't hurt, okay? And that's really what one of their focuses is on. And as we know, if there's any downtime, there's a lot of risk. It could be customer dissatisfaction. It could be loss of revenue if you're in the, you know, the sales part of the organization and all. It could be reputational risk. There are a whole bunch of risks associated with downtime. So the uptime is what they strive for. Now, Sumit mentioned Bronx Lebanon Hospital. I think that's the old name. It's now called Bronx Care, okay? I got it, Bronx Care, okay? And Bronx Care, sitting in the back there, they made a decision that they were going to go and use GAVS for managed services. And I think you mentioned to me earlier that there's about 7 different functions that they perform for you on a daily basis. And you also said to me that the service is excellent and that your dollar saves have been tremendous, okay? And that was used, I understand, to offset some of the Medicare and Medicaid lessened payments that you were receiving from the government, and you had to figure out, how can I offer still good clinical services without decreasing the people that offer those services? So they looked at the infrastructure organization and asked GAVS to run it for them. And, you know, I understand this worked out pretty well. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yes.
All right, that's not a planted question. Now, Actually, they're involved in other things too, and I got an education on blockchain. And, you know, blockchain, they have a real good expertise in that. And blockchain can be used to support any type of transaction for value, whether exchange of payment, okay? And, you know, I learned that there's a private blockchain as well as a public blockchain. And these guys have the expertise. And, you know, if you ever want to talk to them about that, they'd be very open to figuring out how it can best meet some of your business needs. Now, about myself, because actually, Joe, I'm sorry, I'm probably taking up your 15 minutes too.
No, you can take my, you're doing a great job.
No.
But by the way, he's on the board at Seton Hall, and I'm a Villanova guy,
Yeah.
so we're actually competitors.
Okay. Now we'll get into some of the things that I'm involved with besides supporting GAVS where I can. Okay. Yes, I'm on the Board of Regents of Seton Hall University. Have been there for actually 13 years on the board. Okay. I'm also involved with a hospital in New Jersey, which is part of Atlantic Health System, which is Overlook. And my wife and I funded a startup of an eating disorder facility at Overlook when there was none in the state of New Jersey. And actually, thank you. It was our pleasure to do that. We actually now have a full-time in-resident where children from 8 years of age through adolescent years, 21, can be treated 40 hours a week instead of going to school. And if they degrade, we have an inpatient capability as well now in New Jersey at Overlook Hospital. And it's staffed by, you know, the nutritionist and the psychiatrist and the nursing staff and the medical staff, et cetera. Another thing that I'm involved with is, and I don't want to sound like an evangelist up here, but St. Paul's Outreach. And actually, St. Paul's Outreach started in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where you work, Sal. And what that's all about is people, when they graduate college, sign up as missionaries and give up at least 2 years of their life making money to act as a missionary to awaken the faith amongst college students. And it's a Catholic organization. So, you know, there's only 4% of Catholics that go to church on Sunday, okay? So I said I don't want to sound like an evangelist, but there's a need to do that.
Tom DeShero is the CIO of Drexel. He goes.
Okay.
He's part of the board.
Good. Because as we know, Christianity around the world is being, you know, it's like they're the bad guys, okay? So we're trying to awaken the faith in college students, and we're on many campuses, both public as well as parochial university. For example, they're at Rutgers University, they're at the University of South Florida, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they live with the students, and they're accessible, and they hold events for the students. But besides those three, the other thing that Sumit alluded to is Wounded Warrior Project, okay? I'm very involved with that. Actually, on May 31st, I attended their Courage Awards right here in Midtown Manhattan, and it was a fantastic event. I do soldier rides with them. In April, I did a soldier ride in Arkansas, Hot Springs, Arkansas with them. Last year, I did one in San Antonio, Texas with them. And, you know, the big thing with Wounded Warriors is a lot of them have what we call invisible injuries, things that you don't see by looking at them. And mainly it's PTSD and it's TBI, traumatic brain injury. And they need our help, their families need our help, and we try to give them the support that they need because the biggest casualty is if we would forget the people that are in need, okay? Actually, my wife is in Washington, D.C. today, or all week, with my daughter and a second grader and a fourth grader. And she sent me a picture of the World War II memorial. And in it is an inscription that was written by President Harry S. Truman. World War II memorial in Washington, D.C. Our debt to the heroic and valiant men and women in the service of our country can never be repaired. They have earned our undying gratitude. America will never forget their sacrifices. And that's really what Wounded Warriors is all about. Okay? So it actually, the month of June happens to be National PTSD Month as well. And 77.4% of the veterans that return from either Afghanistan or Iraq have trauma that they're dealing with. Another statistic you should know is 22 commit suicide a day, every day, okay? So, you know, we do our part to see if we can help them. And if you want to make a donation to WWP, please do. Well, thank you very much. And Joe?
Bill, fantastic job.
I think Seton Hall will beat Villanova this year. Since they lost all 5 of their players to the pros.
Starters. I think you have a heck of a shot. Bill and Sumit, I don't know how I follow up on that, but I'd just like to touch on the Wounded Warriors and post-traumatic stress disorder, because we are benefactors to the Travis Manion Foundation, which takes care of families of fallen soldiers. So I'm really in tune with that. I actually had dinner with the former athletic director at West Point, and he was a general in Iraq, and he said, you said the percentage is 70%. He said, Joe, every soldier has traumatic stress disorder, every single one. It's 100%. He still lays awake at night. So, Bill, that's a tremendous charity that you're involved in. Thank you very much. And it's great to have, it's an honor to share the podium with a gentleman like you that's achieved and overachieved in his career and has been very philanthropic. It's great to finally get to meet you. I've heard so many good things about you from Sumit. Thank you. I'd like to first thank, it's all about spending time with great people, and what we say is we make friends, you know. We've all been, Sumit and myself, I'm 58, he looks like he's 35, but he might have, I think he's rounding second though too, but, you know, it's not about doing deals, you know. The way we build our businesses and the way we've been successful, and the reason this room's full with former customers, but I don't even call them that. They're partners and they're friends. We make friends every day because, you know, it's one thing to do a point-to-point deal. It's another thing to make friends. And we always say, do you care about me? That's what we think about, and that's why I love these guys. So first off, I'd like to thank Sumit and the GAVS team for doing this, for honoring me and Bill tonight. It's a tremendous honor. I can tell you this, nobody's ever thrown a dinner for me, so this is a first. It's great. The second thing is, my mother, who's still alive, I made a call after I checked in, and I said, Mom, I got into Harvard. You did? Isn't it a little late? But yeah, Mom, I finally made it, so I'm in Harvard. I showed her a picture of the room. So, Sumit, thank you. I can tell my mom I'm in Harvard finally. I'd like to thank also everybody that came tonight. I mean, many of these people are friends of mine, and we have the CIO, Tom DeShero, and Bill Mooney. Tom runs one of the biggest universities and healthcare systems in Philadelphia, Drexel University. He's a personal friend, and they came up from Philadelphia to join us tonight. And Tom sits on boards of CIOs around the country, and he really believes in what we're trying to do and believes in me. And Tom, thank you very much for coming. Really, really appreciate it. Marty Diller, who's the CIO of Complete Healthcare, the largest manager of nursing homes in the country, he came up from Philadelphia, and I really appreciate. Marty's a great friend, golf partner, and we're going to play again soon, but thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. The CTO of IBM Blockchain, Niraj, Patel, is here. He's been a long-term friend. He used to be the CIO of GMAC, the largest commercial lender in the country, and he's now the CTO of IBM Blockchain. So when we talk about blockchain, we go to Niraj. And Niraj brought his son, who's a freshman, I think, at Lehigh. And watch this kid. He's on the rise. He's going to be the next great IT person, in the marketplace. I had Paul McCune, who had to leave. His wife's having a baby, but the CIO of UBS Infrastructure was here tonight. He's another personal friend. My brother Ken is in the room. He's a senior vice president with Flexential, the largest roll-up of data centers in the U.S. We just bought Via West. They have 41 data centers across the country. They're a powerhouse, and they're a great partner. My friend Bill Connors, who we played football at Villanova together, each other's best men, worked in IT together, and Bill was the former, he built Sev1 into a $1 billion powerhouse, and they sold it to Bain. He's now the CEO of AppBus, and they're a partner of GAVS Tech. Literally everybody I've introduced in my Rolodex that has met Sumit and has met the team, they say, wow, I really like these guys. I didn't know about them. And everything keeps going forward. I mean, it's just, that's the kind of company they are. The reason I got involved, I mean, Amity, you know, I'm probably, Sumit's rounding second. I'm probably standing on third, maybe not rounding it. I'm waiting to see if there's a squeeze bunt and they're going to send me home. But, you know, I've done a lot in my career, and I've been very fortunate, you know, run 3 software companies and sold them, and now I'm moving on to other things. I run a company that invests in quality companies and helps with business development. And I met Sumit and Ivan. I was running Hive.io, a really emerging software company, virtualization. Sumit and I went in and we met with Ivan, and they turned up 3,500 desktops on desktop virtualization. They do radiology and everything, and it was seamless. And that's where our friendship started. I said, well, who the heck are these guys? I mean, I've been in IT for 30 years. Oh, Sharad, I'm sorry. I have one of the top executives from Siemens Healthcare. My good friend Dtcc is the CEO, and Sharad came up from Wayne, Pennsylvania to join us tonight. And Sharad, we're working on a really emerging technology for connecting medical equipment into the cloud, and I really appreciate you being here. Sharad, I'm sorry. So I just want to touch on why I got involved with these guys, because I'm not wasting time anymore. You know, first off, I don't do business with people that aren't going to be my friends, and Tom DeShero will tell you that. I'm only hanging out with guys that I like. Secondly, I'm not going to waste my time because I'm standing on third, and you know, I'm not on first base. You know, looking to steal second. I don't have much time left. And when I look at a company and I say GAVS Tech, and when I give it to you, it blows you away, right? That they have proprietary software in blockchain, in data analytics, in security, all the hot areas in this country. They have traction. They have $100 million in revenue that they've grown. Sumit says, let's get this to $1 billion. We have access to capital. They have a tremendous inspirational leader. I mean, let's just buy companies, organically grow them. He literally calls me every day. What should we do? Sumit, let's do this, this, and this. What do you think? I trust him more than I trust myself. I just want to bounce it off him. He goes, Joe, anything's possible. Let's do it. I never get a no. And that's why I love these guys. This is going to be the next big blockbuster company. I can guarantee you that. They have the technology. They have 1,200 engineers in India. They have customer traction, and they have the relationships, and that's really what I'm helping you with. So I'm not going to bore you. I'm not going to bore you anymore. I want you to drink wine, have fun. We're here to make friends, network. Everybody, all boats rise when we make friends. That's our goal. All boats rise, and it's worthwhile that you spent the time to come here tonight. You're going to meet somebody that's going to enable you to propel to the next level in some facet. That's all we're trying to do. So thank you very, very much. Really, really appreciate you coming. Thank you.
I wanted to introduce to you our dinner speaker, Peter Bender-Samuel. Fantastic background from the forests of Amazon with his missionary father from England, and has been in the Texas region for the longest time, has decided not to drop his English accent because that helps him. Peter, again, has been a guide, and a lot of the technology stuff that we're doing in the AI infrastructure area has been some of Peter's ideas. Peter runs one of the most successful IT advisory companies, Everest Group, and I'd love Peter to kind of talk to you and prognosticate about where technology is going and what he would like us to look at. And before Peter comes on board, I'm actually very happy and proud that we have Asha Rangappa amongst us. Asha, again, has a stellar background. Classic first-generation Indian parents, overachieving daughter from Princeton and Yale. But interesting that she went and joined the FBI, and I've spoken with her. She had actually a broken rib just before the FBI physical, and she still went ahead and took part in the physical and became an FBI agent, has been a counterterrorism interrogation and an FBI agent for the New York region. She's now an assistant dean at Yale, and some of you may have seen her, except for Will Amity on CNN. So would love Asha to come and take a bow and at least get to tell the people about what you've done briefly, and then would love Peter very briefly. It'll be nice if you could. And that, just to let you know, was on popular demand. And then we'd love Peter to have the dinner discussion. Asha?
Okay, so I've totally been put on the spot, and I don't want to take up too much time because this is not about me at all. You know, what I just want to emphasize, I was an FBI agent. I did counterintelligence investigations. Basically, I was catching spies. And one of the things that I comment on now and talk about is the efforts of hostile adversaries to find ways to divide Americans and pit us against each other. That is the goal, is to create chaos, to fragment and weaken our democratic fabric, which has made us what we are until now. So I just want to echo what Joe said, is that repairing that actually isn't about congressional investigations or Robert Mueller. It actually starts from the ground. What Russia did was exploit something that was already here. And so this idea that your friends first, I think, is what matters most. I'm sitting next to the guest of honor tonight, who actually doesn't watch CNN. And we found actually many things that we have in common, and I think that is really what makes us Americans. And that, I guess, is the thought I want to leave you with today, and thank you so much.
I don't know how you follow that. I do watch CNN. And when I watch CNN, I can't help but see a world that is really changing, right? And it's changing in many ways. And it's changing in a very profound way. And I think in IT, now I lead a firm called the Everest Group. We do research, we do comparative analysis, benchmarking, analytics and pricing, and then we do consulting. And we focus that in the area of IT, business process engineering, and engineering. So just to back up a bit, yeah, 666 has that problem. And as we look across services, and we, by the way, have more analysts serving in services than Gartner and Forrester combined. So we spent a lot of time looking at this. So I'm here, got asked to think about what's happening within IT and tell you kind of, so track you from 40,000 feet perhaps down to 10, okay, and think about what's trend. So the first biggest trend is this thing called digital transformation. Okay, and we heard earlier about labor arbitrage, right? How that world, and in the mid-90s, we looked at the world changing in IT with the advent of labor arbitrage, and we had the growth of TCS, Infosys, the big Indian firms. In fact, IBM turned into, so it was one of the few firms who were incumbents at that time who sort of adopted labor arbitrage. And that has been sort of the dominant thing that has affected IT for the last 20 years. But times that are changing, to quote Dylan, right? And what's changing is this digital revolution and this digital transformation. It is completely transforming services, transforming IT. And as I think about that, we conflate two things when we think about digital transformation. We have digital transformation that changes the business, where if you're changing customer experience. For example, I was talking to Siemens, right? And they were talking about how they were fundamentally changing their business, applying AI to their machines and morphing what they were doing. Now, that's business transformation and digital transformation changing business. You see this in marketing, where we get ability to target individuals rather than segments. There's another kind of transformation that's being forced because of that, and that's called modernization. And we have IT modernization. And inside of IT modernization, we're not explicitly modernizing IT to change customer experience, but so we can support the business transformation. In fact, as we've looked at the modernization, there's going to be more money spent, quite frankly, on modernization than there will be on business transformation. So that's a scary thought, right? There's a huge amount of cost. There's a huge journey associated with that. So what do I mean by digital, right? Well, earlier we saw that kind of flashing across here. If you think about GAVS, there's a lot of things. You think about AI, you think about automation, you think about analytics, all this new stuff, right? And it's not one thing. It hunts in a pack. Right? It forces a business change. Now, we've been investigating this, and we've been trying to understand, how does this work out in a company? And one of the ways we do is we take 50 to 200 companies, and we look at a journey. It could be modernizing IT infrastructure. It could be modernizing, moving to, say, agile or agile IT. It could be in marketing. It could be any of these journeys. And we try to build we investigate that across, let's say, 200 companies to try and understand what's happening. And the first really scary thing when you find out is most of these journeys are failing. Okay? Over 80% of these digital journeys are not meeting expectations. That's horrible, right? Agreed? It's shocking. And by what I mean by not meeting expectations, they run out of steam. Okay? We do some, and then we just can't go any further. So we don't get to that promised land, whether it is a truly agile, truly capable IT organization that is, in the cloud, okay, that is running DevOps, that is, or in a marketing context, right, that an ability to target individuals so I can offer you exactly what you want, exactly when you need it, right? So these are the things we want to do. These are the things we aspire to, but they're failing. So as we look at these reasons for failure, well, first of all, we look at the supply chain to do this, right? And now just let me comment on the supply chain for a moment. So we got IBM here, right? So one of the few firms that has successfully pivoted from the operational excellence model to the arbitrage model, and is certainly investing incredibly against the new digital model, right? Blockchain is certainly one of the key technologies, one of many key technologies they're investing in. IBM was one of 3 companies to make the transition when digital arbitrage hit. There were just as many vendors in that market space as there are in the labor arbitrage space today. That says that not many of them are going to make it. And the reason for that is it requires a different business model. And that's why we're going to see these smaller firms that don't have that legacy with them to be able to deliver that. And I think just put a pitch in for GAVS. What I've watched with GAVS is when I first started to focus on GAVS, they had a really nice labor arbitrage model. During the time I've been watching them, they've got blockchain, they've got this zero defects automation in data centers. I mean, they are almost sort of the quintessential picture of what you would want, the kind of modernization techniques you need as you move forward. Analytics, AI. I mean, and I think that's what sort of, I think, Joe and others find exciting. But as you think about this, as you think about your supply chain, it's very likely that the incumbents are not likely the guys to take you forward. They're failing just like these journeys are failing. So 3 other thoughts about these journeys. Why are they failing? It's not because of the technology. It's because of the magnitude of the business change that goes with that. So back here we have Agile, right? We got a team that does Agile DevOps. To do that requires you to really think differently about how you organize IT. Right? It requires, and that is hard to do. Also, you have to change your policies and procedures. Right? So if you're going down blockchain, same thing. Blockchain is going to force a set of changes on your organization, on how you think, on your mindset, on what you're doing, which is going to not be supported by your current organization. So you've got organization change, you have policy and procedure change, you have change outside of IT to enable this to happen. It is the enormity and the consistency of this change which seems to be defeating these journeys. And one of the things we've found is that if you don't recognize that and build the teams to manage your board, to manage the business, and to help them understand just how long this journey is going to be, we tend to think about it as, let's invest in some technology, let's buy me some blockchain, right? Let's get me some zero defects, right? Let's give me some cloud, right? But how many clouds do you have? It's a hybrid cloud world, right? It gets complicated quickly. So, and as you do this, as you go down the cloud route, you start to think about, well, I need Agile to go with that. So that moves you towards a DevOps model, which causes you to think about differently about your how you configure people. So the change is very significant. These journeys won't happen in 6 months. Anyone who's selling you a 6-month journey, throw them out. In our research, we found these things take a minimum of 18 months and probably 3 years to get to because of all the change. And you've got to be able to have your organization stay the course and not exhaust itself on that journey. So that's what I see coming, okay? And fundamentally, what the picture I painted you is that in 5 to 10 years, the way we do IT, the way we do technology will be fundamentally different. Now, I'm not saying there won't be labor arbitrage. We've done that analysis. We're going to have to use the talent pool in India. We just don't have enough engineers. We don't have enough talent in this country to meet our needs, right? But the way we do that is going to be fundamentally different. And likely the people you do it with will also be different. So that's what I want to leave you with. And hopefully those are some comforting thoughts or some not so comforting thoughts. But that's what we see coming. And that's why and the constraint that we think will be challenging you as you move forward will be how to manage the depth and the breadth of that change in your organizations and how to sustain that journey. This will not be a one and done. This will be a continuous, ongoing effort that you will have to be able to keep focused on and keep funded and keep the patience of the organization with it. So with those cheery thoughts, enjoy your meal.